So I gotta think, it probably wouldn't be unwarranted for me to make the assumption that you are a fragrance collector. Whether you consider yourself a collector or not, depending on how you view it, the chances are if you're watching this channel, especially on a consistent daily basis, you probably have a decent amount of fragrances built up. And it doesn't even have to be full bottles. It can be samples, decants, whatever. That counts. That's fragrance that you can wear. You have an interest in this stuff. And as someone who has an interest in this hobby, there are certain fragrances that you just can't get away with not having. And again, if you just want to build up a collection of samples, that's totally fine, but you should have these in your collection in one way or another. But with a catch, I don't have your typical ones in here, and by that I basically mean the blues and the aquatics that is talked about all the time. But with a catch, I'm not talking about all of the blues and the aquatics here in this video, right? So this video could have been filled to the brim with Sauvage and Dylan Blue and Dolce & Gabbana The One and Acqua di Gio Profumo, right? That stuff could have been in here, but they're not. I wanted to choose fragrances that are something other than those to talk about here today that I still do think every collector should have in one way or another. So these are going to be typically a little bit more overlooked, generally speaking. So because of that, I think they don't get enough coverage, and I think they should. So I will provide links to these down below. I will also guide you over to the community tab where I'm posting deals all day long, every single day. If you want to save money on fragrances, that's where you want to be. A whole bunch of rare stuff comes into stock, oftentimes on discounters, and it sells out quick. And so if you've been trying to pick up some rare things, as soon as it comes in stock, I post about it so that way you can get it. I'm also doing $500 giveaways over there as well. So if you want to be entered to win that, you got to be subscribed and you got to check out the community tab on a monthly basis. All right, enough talking. Let's get on with it here. Parfums de Marly Herod. This is the only niche scent in this list. Figured I'd put it up front and center right out of the way. This would be a good one to have if you like tobacco and vanilla, basically, with a cinnamon accord as well. Now, there are designer alternatives that you could go with as well, like a Spice Bomb Extreme or something like that. But I wanted to kind of feature some love over to this because out of all the Parfums de Marlys I have, this one doesn't make it on the channel as much as I think it should. You know, of course, I have full control over that. I talk about Leighton quite a bit. I talk about Carlisle with some regularity. But for whatever reason, I don't bring this one up enough. And I think I should start bringing it up more when it fits because it's a really, really high quality, great performing, sweet tobacco scent. If you have a little bit more money to throw around, if you want to treat yourself to a nice, more premium product, this would be a great one to have. And even if you don't want to have a full bottle, get a sample, get a decant. You know, it doesn't take much of this. So a 10 ml decant will last you quite a while, realistically, especially if you're just not wearing it every single day. The point is, if you're a collector, you got to at least get your nose on it because it is really, really good. Now, this next one is probably a scent that you weren't expecting to see in here. And personally, I think it's criminally underrated. And the reason why I think it's underrated is because this is a flanker. This is the first flanker to this line. And the original was not very well received. And typically, when something starts off on the wrong foot like that, every other flanker that comes out afterwards automatically gets shunned to some extent. It doesn't get taken seriously. And this is an instance where I do think it actually brings a decent amount to the table for what it's worth. Carolina Herrera Bad Boy Parfum. So, you know, I can't really say that I care for the original all that much either. A lot of people don't like it. I don't like it that much either, okay? But this is really, really solid. Look at that atomizer on there. Now this has a nice green cannabis accord. There's leather, there's black pepper. It's impressive for what you get and for the price you pay. Now this isn't the most unique thing ever. It's not a completely groundbreaking scent. But when you are after a nice, sweet mass pleaser, a nice versatile scent for the cooler months, but it still does have a little bit of a unique twist, this is something that you can entertain, and I think you'll be happy with it if you are after that criteria. Now, for guys who are looking for, you know, something that is going to be really challenging and more masculine and more mature overall, this is not going to be that. You know, keep in mind it's a bad boy flanker. Still has a little bit of that original DNA in there, mainly the sweetness, but the leather, the cannabis, and the black pepper really give this one something different about it. It gives it a little bit more substance overall. And personally, I think it's a solid one to have around if you're into this sort of thing. So don't pass up on it if you are. We can go for a cheapie up next, usually $36, $35 on discounters for a 100 ml bottle here. We have TRUSSARDI RIFLESSO. Now this has tonka bean, leather, and apple. This often gets compared to La Nuit de l'Homme, which is usually, even at discounters, still around $80 or so, sometimes actually a bit more than that now that I think about it. And retail is around 100, so that one's kind of hard to get for a more affordable price. Now, I will say this is not a clone of La Nuit de l'Homme to me personally. You know, this has apple, it's fruitier, it's a little bit more fresh overall, but there's a little bit of cardamom in here, and usually cardamom automatically ties fragrances to La Nuit de l'Homme. It's like if something has cardamom in it, it immediately gets married to La Nuit de l'Homme, when a lot of times that's not true. In this instance here, do you get maybe a little bit of a La Nuit feel? A little, okay, just a little, not a ton, not a clone, but it's kind of in that vein just a little bit. But I think it also be looked at as a scent that is really well on its own. I think this has its own identity. It's more aromatic first and foremost, fruity, kind of a little bit sweet as well. There's a little bit of a tonka in here, and it does have some of that spiciness, like I said. But ultimately, I think it's a really solid scent at the price point. If this was going for $70, $80 on discounters, would I be as happy about it? No, probably not. But at this price point, $35, it is a really, really nice one to have in the collection. Check out this little goofy looking bottle. I've had this thing forever. I mean, you can go back to some of my very first videos and you'll see the same exact bottle. I believe it's a 30 ml, 1 ounce. Why haven't I upgraded? I have no idea, but you know, is what it is. Burberry BRIT for men. This has rose, ginger, and tonka bean. A really nice masculine rose scent. And it was actually the first men's rose fragrance that I ever got. And again, you can see me holding this thing up 5 years ago when I was first starting out. And the fact that I liked it back then really says something about the scent to me, because to take a beginner and to toss them a rose scent for men and have them like it, a lot of times could go wrong. Like if you were to give a beginner a Moschino Toy Boy, they would hate it, right? A lot of people who aren't beginners still hate it. And so I think this one was done really well, very strategic with how they went about this one. There's a lot of balance to that rose. Again, you know, you saw the notes I listed off there. There's many more as well to kind of give it a little bit more of a masculine, aromatic, and spicy smell. That ginger rose combination though is unbeatable, and this stuff smells great for not a lot of money. It's easy to forget about these days. Burberry in general is kind of in the shadows a little bit. They don't really stay as mainstream and relevant in the community as a lot of other big brands, but this one especially is really, really nice. Gotta have some of this around always. Armani Code ABSOLU, tonka bean, orange, vanilla, and some suede in here. Love at first sniff for me. You guys have heard the story from me a million times. But ultimately, I think it's one that is really worth investing in if you're someone who, again, likes fragrances in this category. I mean, I feel like I have to say that every time. You know, I would think it would go without saying sometimes, but it doesn't always. Very, very sweet. And so it's important to recognize what you're into with fragrances before you dive straight into something like this, which could be potentially on the opposite end of what you normally go for. Like I said, if you go for nothing but freshies, aquatics, blue fragrances, and whatever, which are all great, and you dive right into this, it's going to be wildly different. So you do have to exercise some caution there and do some due diligence. Sample it first if you can, walk into a store and smell it first. But ultimately, again, if you're into this sort of thing, you like vanilla sweetness and tonka bean, and you want a really nice, rich, good performing winter scent, this is a parfum concentration, then it's definitely worth having around no matter where you're at in your collecting hobby. It could be brand new if you like sweet fragrances. You could be a veteran, been doing it for years, and if you still like sweet fragrances, you got to have it. Kind of flip-flopping back and forth between different types of things. So we're going to go from a sweet, more youthful fragrance to a modern, more mature one. I didn't mean to say modern. A mature, more masculine one is what I meant to say. I guess it could be modern too, but it's DUNHILL Elite, or DUNHILL Icon Elite rather. Now this one here is really, really underrated also. It has cardamom, sandalwood, suede, ebony wood, very woods heavy. And this is completely different than DUNHILL Icon, you know, the silver bottle. That one smells like grape soda off the top. It's got a bunch of neroli and citrus and that sort of thing. Some musk in there, very fresh, very spring oriented. This is, you know, again, pretty much the opposite. Smoky, kind of woody, spicy, a little bit dry, but again, very masculine, more traditional, and again, completely opposite to Armani Code Absolu, which is going to be more youthful and that sort of thing. Like I said, no one's really talking about this stuff. DUNHILL Icon, the original, gets a fair amount of hype and pretty much everyone knows it. Not so much this. And I do think, especially if you're kind of further into your collecting and you want to get something a little bit different to kind of contrast what else you have in your collection, this would be a nice one to go with. I don't have anything else that smells like this. You gotta have an aromatic fougere, in my opinion. Not so much beginners, but people who have been into it for a little while longer. I do think it's important to have some sort of fragrance to fill that role of an aromatic fougere. And there's so many directions you can go down on both the designer and niche side. There's a ton of them out there and they're still putting out aromatic fougeres, which is crazy. Ultimately, when I sit down and I weigh all of the options and the price points and the performance, the one that I feel the most comfortable with recommending to the biggest group of people is Platinum Egoiste by Chanel. So this one strikes a really nice balance of having this kind of soapy shower gel freshness, but completely opposite to that of like a Dylan Blue. You know, that gets compared to shower gel. Sauvage gets compared to shower gel. Think of those as like a, you know, I don't know really how I want to describe it. A younger dude's like Axe shower gel, and I don't mean that disrespectfully to the blue fragrances because I love them, but think of it like that, and then think of this simply as a more luxurious and more expensive, refined smelling shower gel, right? It's kind of how I think of it, but it's got lavender, geranium, you know, all of your typical aromatic fougere fixings. You know, it's a barbershop scent, and it's going to be the most modern take on a barbershop scent, at least one of the most modern takes on it. And ultimately, I think for the price, you get great performance, you get great quality. This is a new bottle, by the way, as you can see, and it works great. And I think every guy at some point should have something in this category, and this one you really can't go wrong with. I think it's going to be also one of the most mass-pleasing aromatic fougères. Going back to a cheapie and going back in the opposite direction in terms of scent profile here, we have ZEGNA Forte. Honey, tobacco, and tonka bean are some of the main notes. So when you get into fragrances in this price point, about $35 or so, 100 ml, and you see note breakdowns like that, it could go one of two ways. It could be really good, or it could be really not so good. Okay, and the reason why is because with a smaller price, you have, of course, less budget to make the scent, and it's harder to do sweet fragrances on a budget. There's a lot of them out there that are great, but when you look at a lot of the big brands that pump out a ton of fragrances and they all end up on discounters for 20 bucks, and when you kind of look at the trend, they're almost all fresh, right? And it makes sense. They're so easy to do. They're very cookie cutter. It's easy to pump out. These take a little bit more of a kind of a resource standpoint to get going good. And so when you do find one that is good, it's really impressive to have. And this one here, again, it's all about that tonka and honey here. It's not going to be as heavy and sweet as some of your other fragrances that have this similar note breakdown. Typically, those will also be more expensive, but on a budget, this is really nice. I'm a big fan of it, and this one has impressed me heavily. It's a newer pickup for me this year, and I think it is really, really good and definitely shouldn't sleep on it. Run through these last two really quick because you probably know them and you probably have them, but it's AZZARO Wanted by Night. Still, I think people are going to be apprehensive for this, and I understand why, but I do think, you know, it's worth having around for just about every guy out there. This is kind of similar to Bad Boy, where the original AZZARO Wanted puts a sour taste in people's mouth. They start putting out flankers. They want nothing to do with them because they didn't like the original. But Wanted by Night, and for that matter, Most Wanted and Most Wanted Parfum are drastic improvements over the original. So I do recommend you kind of look into at least one of the flankers. I threw this one in because I still think it's going to be the most mass-pleasing overall. But ultimately, whichever one you land on, you can't go wrong with. And last step, you probably thought I was missing something in here, something I've been obsessing over lately, Iris. And here it is, Gentleman Eau de Parfum. So not Reserve Privé for this, just Gentleman EDP. Could have put in Valentino Uomo Intense, could have put in Dior Homme Intense. But when it comes to more of a blanket statement Iris scent, that's sweet, I go Gentleman. It has more vanilla, more black pepper focus, of course with the iris, whereas the Dior goes more powdery and the Valentino goes more leathery even. So I think this is going to be, generally speaking, the most mass pleasing and a great entry point into the sweet variety of iris scents. And I do think every guy, every collector should have some form of a sweet iris scent. And I think this is a great place to start. A lot of you might have it already, but if you don't, consider it. That's going to do it for me, guys. 10 fragrances that you really just can't skip out on if you have an interest in this hobby. I recommend all of these highly. I wear all of these. I think they're amazing. Links will be down below. That's going to do it for me. Thank you so much for watching. Stay safe, stay healthy. We'll see you tomorrow with another one. Take care.